Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Superhuman Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Dr. Matt Accurso, and today we have a huge guest on the show, Mark Sisson. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me, Matt.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. I was saying to Mark right before we started this conversation that you've been a huge inspiration of mine. And I remember when I was in my uncle's clinic in South Florida, and he was like, yeah, I got to read up on this patient. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, what are you studying? He's like, well, I'm studying this guy, Mark's stuff. He's just absolutely amazing. And that's where I first saw the Daily Apple, was my uncle introduced me to you. Cool. So that was really, really cool. Yeah. But just, it's pretty amazing what you're into, Mark. I mean, you have a new book coming out, not out yet, right? Coming out.
Yes. Well, it depends on when you air this, but October 3rd is the release date for the book. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. And it's called The Keto Reset Diet, Reboot Your Metabolism in 21 Days and Burn Fat Forever. We're going to get into those details. Your history is fascinating. I mean, you've been doing some really, really cutting edge stuff, in the 70s and the 80s. You were a high endurance athlete. Seems like you've always really been into performance. You have something like 20 books out. You've opened restaurants. You have Primal Kitchen, which is just blowing up. I make this really amazing smoothie for my little girls in the morning. I have 3 little girls, and I use your Primal Protein. And I'm telling you, the first thing they do when they wake up is they're like, Daddy, are you going to make the shake? That's all they want. Yeah. So it's amazing. I put raw cacao in it. I put chia seed. I put hemp seed. I put cacao butter, turmeric, and they just love it.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. So where I want to start today is your story, where you started, how you became so passionate about health and high performance, and now you literally have hundreds of thousands of people following your stuff. You're holding retreats all over the world. It's pretty fascinating. How'd you get to where you are now?
Well, it's like, looking back on it, it made perfect sense. But while I was doing it, it was like, oh my God, this door shuts, this door opens, lots of pivots and turns and, and twists. But it starts out with me at a really early age, in my early teens, getting interested in health and longevity, and reading up on, diet and exercise and all of the things that it would take to be healthy and live a long life and become strong. And I started running as a teenager, largely just to get home from school quicker. I could always beat the bus home, so I started running. And then I sort of, I had read a number of books on aerobics and how anything that you did that was aerobic activity, we call it cardio now, would enhance your cardiovascular health and therefore your longevity. So that was great. I was getting acknowledgement for all of the miles I was putting in. And I was reading books on how to fuel for performance, which in those days meant lots of carbohydrates, lots of complex carbohydrates, lots of, healthy, quote unquote, healthy whole wheat, whole grains. And I became a pretty good runner and eventually a good triathlete, one of the top in the country. But even though I looked fit on the outside, I was really falling apart on the inside. And I mean really falling apart. I had osteoarthritis in my feet. I had irritable bowel syndrome all the time. I had GERD. I had upper respiratory tract infections several times a year. I got injured easily. It was crazy. So all these things I thought I was doing for my health in the name of chasing performance was tearing me down. And then I found out that it wasn't just the miles I was putting in, but it was the food that I was eating that was causing inflammation. And so I retired from competition at the age of 28 or 29, truly. And I competed a few years beyond that, but at the elite level, I had to cut it way back because of all the injuries. And I started thinking about all the things that I could do to be as strong and fit and lean as possible with, the least amount of pain, suffering, and sacrifice. And that became my life work, is basically looking for these hidden genetic switches that we all have that we can manipulate and build muscle and become faster and stronger and burn fat based on the choices that we make in our lives that will turn these switches on or off. We call it epigenetics, but this level of control above the genes that has to do with the types of foods we choose to eat, the types of exercise we choose to do, how much sleep we get, how much sun exposure we get, how much play we engage in, how often we use our brains. Everything in our lives has an impact on how we rebuild, renew, regenerate, recreate ourselves minute by minute, day by day. And so that's become the essence of how I got into this thing years ago. And to this day, excites me every single day when I wake up. It's like, I love doing research. I love, chasing those links down the rabbit hole and looking at research papers and figuring out, what the science has shown is happening at the level of genetics. And then how can we incorporate that sort of information into our daily lives?
Yeah, I love that. I like to call that nerding out. I like to nerd out every day in some way, right? It sounds like you like it too.
Yeah.
You're a extremely active guy. It's like for those out there who've never met you before, I just want to let everybody know out there that this is one of the most ripped guys on the planet. If you see Mark, you're like, what the, like, I got to up my game. And, I don't know your age, Mark, but I honestly couldn't even guess it because of how you look. You obviously live the lifestyle, and you're a big paddleboarder, right?
Yeah, exactly. I love paddleboarding. Yeah. So I just turned 64 last.
64.
Yeah.
Nice.
And, I was a runner for a long time, as I said, but it was never really fun to be running. It was like, I did it. I was good at it. I managed the pain. I got through it. I raced well, but it was never really a case of, oh my God, this is so fun running. This is so fun. I'm in a race and I'm
right.
beating myself up. But so I kind of, about 15 years ago, said, I got to find ways to move that are more fun. So I play ultimate frisbee once a week, a really, really spirited game. I mean, that's the term I use. My wife says there's way too much testosterone in that game. You guys are, you guys are so
too.
Yeah, but I love the game and it's so much fun. And I, even though I'm getting my ass handed to me, by 20 somethings running up. Sometimes I hand it to them. Every point is fun, and every time it's like I never think, oh my God, when's it going to be over? I think, oh crap, it's going to be over, and someone's going to win the game in the next couple of points, and then it'll be over for another week.
Yeah. So
I'm looking at ways to have fun. So paddleboarding became one of my ways to have fun, and very meditative for me. I discovered it about, I think, 12 years ago, and now I try to get out once a week, sometimes twice a week, and I go alone typically. And for me, it is not only meditative and it's not only, an opportunity to get some good thinking done, but it is the best workout I can envision for myself.
For sure.
Because, if you know how to paddle, if you know how to get, to lock your shoulders out and keep your arms straight and use your lats and your serratus and your transverse abdominis and your legs, on every stroke, you're feeling like, oh my God, I am just a machine, right? Yeah. And an hour of that is a tremendous workout. It's fun. Same thing. I keep thinking, oh, I don't think when is it going to be over. I think, oh crap, I got to get back and, make a phone call or attend a meeting or something.
Yeah.
But paddling and by the way, when I was a runner, running was the best exercise I could imagine. And my legs felt like pistons and it was great. And then when I became a triathlete, cycling was the best, workout ever. And I love to go up I was a hill climber. And I could feel my thighs and my calves. And, I felt like I was in the zone and these were pistons. And then when my kids got a little bit older and I sold my bikes because I didn't want to get, I was kind of freaked out about all the traffic on the roads that I ride on. And I became an inline skater. And then for 4 years, I was a great skater and my legs were pistons and everything was great. And so every time I've had that sort of exercise, I keep thinking to myself, I visualize the machinery that is my body.
Yeah.
When I'm on a paddleboard, everything, again, from the shoulders to the lats to the abdomen and all the core, the glutes, the legs, everything, every single stroke, I can literally feel it. And it's just such a powerful feeling to be able to do that. And you don't have to raise your heart rate that high, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to be like, making it a high-end cardio experience.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome because, I was in the semi-pro circuit of surfing for a while and I was really into it and I went really hard in the sport. And then I got on a paddleboard one day and I forget where it was on the East Coast somewhere. There was a hurricane off the coast and some guy was like, yeah, you need to try this thing. And I jumped on it and I've been addicted ever since because you're exactly right. You feel your whole body engage. And I would highly recommend it for anybody. If you're around a body of water, you need to get on a paddleboard because like you said, Mark, it's super fun. You don't feel stuck in a gym. And like you said, it's, you don't want to get off. It's like you can think out there. It's a way to escape. I feel like when I get on a paddleboard, I'm away from the world. Nothing can get me. I don't need a cell phone. I don't need a computer. It's just me, the board. And there's something about being in water as well. Like water has like a very calming effect, and it helps you meditate and things too. So I think it's really, really neat. Do you ever catch waves on your paddleboard, or are you just straight paddle?
No, once in a while, but I have a long board. I've got a 12-1 layered. It likes to purl on some of the waves that I'm on. But and a lot of times, because I'm out for a workout, I don't wear a wetsuit. I just go, without a shirt on. So I'm not going to hang out in the waves and get chilled that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I catch a wave once in a while, but I'm actually looking at increasing my quiver. I'm getting a longer board for potentially racing, and then a shorter board for actually spending more time in the waves.
Nice.
With that intention of spending time in the waves. But for me, I mean, like during whale season, I had a couple of days.
Oh man,
maybe,
I can't imagine.
Half mile, 3/4 mile off the coast, all alone out there, and then see a 50 or 60 foot mama whale with a calf. 40 feet away from me, 50 feet away from me. It's just pretty amazing and awe-inspiring and a little bit scary, I got to say.
Absolutely. Closest experience I've had with that is manatees. I had this huge pack of manatees come underneath me in a spring one time. It was just the most. It was so amazing. There was like a spiritual aspect to it. It was so amazing,
Yeah.
So I feel you on that. Yeah. So piggybacking off of talking about all these things that help you perform at optimum level each and every day, you obviously have routines that you've incorporated into your week and things that you do each day. I know that, in your regimen, you have times where you do Tabata, have times where you lift heavy things. You have times where you're doing the cardio aspect of things. What do you see in the world today that are hindering people from performing at their highest level? And it's across the board, moms, dads, whoever it is, executives, entrepreneurs, whoever it is. What do you see are like, 3 or 4 things that are the top things that are hindering performance today?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So I think number 1 is diet. You must have your diet dialed in order to be effective at anything else. And so a lot of people who assume that they can exercise away a bad diet, for instance, that doesn't work. So the first thing I tell everybody is let's take a look at how you're generating energy. Are you good at burning fat? Are you so dependent on carbohydrates and glucose that you never burn fat, and therefore you're on this vicious treadmill, this vicious cycle of burning calories and then replacing them with food and doing it over and over and over again and never getting any results? I mean, that's one of those definitions of insanity, right?
Yeah, right.
So getting the diet dialed in, which is my specialty, and that's, we talk in the Primal Blueprint about becoming a fat-burning beast. And my new book, the Keto Reset Diet, is all about using a ketogenic diet for a period of time to reset your metabolism so you burn fat forever. So that's huge for performance, and particularly for entrepreneurs. Yeah. But close second is sleep. I mean, if you don't have your sleep dialed in,
right,
you are inviting a whole host of issues and problems. You won't be as sharp. You won't be as on your game. You might have higher stress levels from not having slept that then manifest themselves in sort of ratcheting up stress across the board because you didn't get enough sleep, and now anything stressful is now doubly stressful in your business life, for instance.
Yeah.
So in terms of performance, I think sleep follows diet pretty closely, and then of course there is exercise. And I think people tend to assume that any amount of exercise or any exercise you do is enough or is good, and to some extent I can agree with that. But then if we dive deeply into the forms of exercise people choose to do and what their goals are, we find that some forms of exercise are very effective. You mentioned Tabatas. I mean, that's a really effective form of exercise.
Yep.
Some forms of exercise are maybe a waste of time. We coined a phrase a bunch of years ago called chronic cardio, which describes this tendency to go out and run or ride a bike or a treadmill or even elliptical and keep your heart rate at 75 to 85% of your max heart rate for 40 minutes to an hour, which is what a lot of people who train for 10Ks and marathons and century rides tend to do. And it turns out that's kind of that's a black hole where you never really get better, and all you do is beat yourself up. So I wrote a book a year and a half ago called Primal Endurance, which teaches people how, if you're really going to race, if you really want to get into these events and complete a triathlon or a 10K or a marathon or whatever, there's a right way to do this that not only gets you the results in terms of your competition that you're entering, but also doesn't beat you up in the rest of your life and doesn't compromise your time with your family, doesn't compromise your efficiency or effectiveness at work. And so within the exercise realm, there are choices that we can make that will serve us better than maybe other choices.
Yep. I love that. And there's a mnemonic that I was taught by a mentor a long time ago, which is meat, fat, Sally, and Sally is a cow. And really the reason we taught this mnemonic is because a lot of people, especially in my clinic in Nashville, I mean, everybody I would meet, 98% of people think that health is complicated. It's just too complicated, and there's always new things coming out, and how do we keep up with it? But you always go back to our ancestors. You developed that word primal. I'd never heard that word used before. You hear paleo, you developed this word primal. And I think it's brilliant because you're taking everybody back to their roots. You're saying, hey, look, it's actually not complicated at all. It's very simple. You revamp a couple things, cut out grain, cut out sugar, don't eat industrialized seed, stay away from vegetable oils. And now, you just revamp somebody's health, maybe a page or two, and give it to them, and you change their life. So based off of, how simple you've made health, and then talking about performance and things like that, what's a story that you personally have encountered? I mean, you've been a high endurance athlete for a very long time. What is a story that you can think of on the top of your head where you've encountered low performance and maybe some chronic health issues that you were talking about? And what did you do to get your health back on track?
Me personally, like my own experience, or people I know?
Your own, or you could use people, like what is some powerful strategies that you've seen maybe across the board?
Well, so one of the early recognitions was when I went from being a national class endurance athlete to becoming a personal trainer, right? Yeah. I just stopped competing. I stopped training at a very, very high level on a daily basis. And I started coaching citizens to become fitter. And that ranged from executives who wanted to enter a triathlon. And so I'd go out and ride 2 hours with them, right? And I'd show them how to ride a bike appropriately. Or I'd literally have housewives who wanted to lose weight, and I'd walk with them because walking is a great exercise.
Yeah.
And I found myself engaged in exercising with my clients 15 to 20 hours a week. But I was doing it at such a ridiculously slow rate and low heart rate for myself that I thought to myself, gee, this is like, it's not a waste of time, but I'm certainly not getting any training effect from it, right? So, and then as a sort of a brushback from that, I thought, well, at least I better go to the track once a week and do some intervals and do some sort of intense work. So this combination of very, very slow, long distance stuff, coupled with once a week going to the track and doing a sprint workout. At the age of 37 or 38, I started entering age group contests just to have fun. I was no longer an elite, but I was racing as well as I ever raced when I was younger and fitter, quote, fitter, because now I was not beating my body up, and when I was going long and slow, I was developing a very effective aerobic system. But then when I was going short and fast, I was developing a very effective glycolytic system. And I wasn't spending any time in what we call that black hole in between, which is where so many endurance athletes spend time. So from a performance basis, that was one of my early aha moments. And that became two of the Primal Blueprint 10 laws. One of which is to find ways to move around a lot at a low level of aerobic activity, and then sprint once in a while. And for many people, that's once a week, once every 10 days is all you need to do. If you're an athlete, you can do it once every 5 days, but certainly not more often than that.
Yeah.
And And that became the sort of groundwork for the Primal Endurance training program, which was to never exceed a certain heart rate in your training, because that heart rate dictates the highest level at which you are still burning purely fat. And if you go above it, you start to burn sugar, and that's antithetical to what we're trying to accomplish.
Right.
I hope that makes sense to you. I didn't mean to take that down that rat hole too far, but
that's great.
That was one of the aha moments. Another huge aha moment for me was my hubris in my diet, because I had been writing about diet for decades already, when at the age of 47, I started to notice that I had my IBS had gotten worse. It got worse partly because I was producing a television show in that year, and
stressed
so
out.
I thought it was the stress of producing a TV show that was making my IBS worse. I started to get arthritis in my fingers, and while I was trying to play golf once a week, I couldn't play golf. It was like I couldn't hold a club appropriately, and so I started to notice that, well, that's not good. And I assumed that this was all a result of just getting older, and everybody gets arthritis a little bit when they get older, and so that's I shouldn't worry about that. And yet I'd been writing about grains and how maybe possibly they were antithetical to health, but I didn't test positive for celiac, so I didn't have that issue. And I kept kind of, giving myself all the excuses of why I could continue to eat grains, because I've been doing it my whole life, because a lot of the research suggested that the bran was healthy, and that part of the fiber was healthy for you, and I did like whole wheat cinnamon bread, and there were lots of things I didn't want to give up eating.
Yeah.
My wife, who had already given up grains on an experiment, she said, "Look, you're writing about this. Why don't you give up grains for 30 days and see what happens?" And geez, I mean, at 30 days it was like my life changed. My IBS went away. This thing that had run my life every day for 45 years went away. The arthritis in my hands that I thought was just a normal part of being 47 went away.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And so that was another major epiphany I had that took literally me being hit upside the head, because I was still, even though I was writing about grains, doing all the research, I was defending my right to eat them. So I thought to myself, well, geez, if that's how stubborn I am about my grains, and how, excuse me, I'm on my leaning post here at my stand. If that's how ridiculous it is, and how myopic I am about grains, I wonder how many tens of millions of people have that same sort of issue where, they just assume because they're not celiac that all of their PCOS, their type 2 diabetes, their potential autoimmune issues are all just sort of bad luck, right? Or bad genes, or nothing they can do anything about.
Yeah.
And that really became the biggest push for Mark's Daily Apple, the Primal Blueprint, and all the stuff.
Yeah. Which is changing hundreds of thousands of people's lives, if not millions. It's awesome. I definitely recommend, if anybody hasn't heard about it, get on Mark's Daily Apple, get on the newsletter. You're going to get tons of amazing information about your health in your inbox. So branching off that, Mark, getting into the Keto Reset Diet book that you wrote, that's going to be coming out very soon. I want to get into the skepticism first. There are people out there that say, well, I can never make it on a keto diet. There's, what about, Dr. Atkins? Like, what about the stuff that he did? Like, you saw what happened to him, and there's no way that I could possibly, keep my body up and consume that much amount of fats and not have the carbs. Because you and I both know that our culture has hammered it into our heads that we need the classic food pyramid. And if you don't have that, you're not going to be healthy, And sadly, I had a cancer patient bring me her diet the other day, and she was eating Jell-O, and she was drinking conventional milk, and she was having granola bars. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. What's going on in our current system? And I have friends that are in the medical system that are, they've devoted their life's work to it. They've had people that have gone into the system and gotten emergencies taken care of. And that's why I always say, we're not bashing on the medical system when I talk like this, because it's important for everybody to know out there that if you lose an arm in a car wreck and you go to your hospital down the road, they're going to sew it back on, and you're going to get some of the best emergency care on the planet. So we live in a very blessed country. But if you're going to go into a hospital for wellness to get well, that's when it can get very, very scary.
Yeah, they don't do wellness.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. So talk to us, Mark, about, like there's skeptics out there. They're saying, there's the keto diet's not for me. There's no way I could do that. And quite frankly, I'm gonna lose weight and I could become sicker. Right? What would you say to a person like that?
Well, first of all, you have to take a step backwards and go, well, as human organisms, we share some pretty cool common biochemistry. We share this ability to burn fat at pretty prodigious amounts if we can configure our diet appropriately and if we can configure our workout strategy appropriately. So I think, there was an assumption for the last several decades that glucose is the preferred fuel of the human body, and therefore we can't ever run out of glucose. If you do, you get low blood sugar, you get cranky and irritable. If you have spent your life depending on carbohydrates, especially as an athlete, that if you restrict carbohydrates, then you'll cut into muscle tissue, you'll cannibalize muscle tissue, all these things that have been sort of the conventional wisdom of diet and exercise for the past 30 or 40 years. But the fact is, humans are pretty well obligate fat burners. We have this amazing biochemistry hardwired into our DNA that allows us to burn fats very efficiently if we want to, and to manufacture a byproduct from fats, which are called ketones. And the ketones are what I call a superfuel. It's like this superpower you have to be able to manufacture ketones in the absence of any other food, and to use those ketones to fuel the brain, to fuel the muscles, to fuel the heart, not just as well as glucose, but in some cases better than glucose. So, if you do the analysis, you go back, well, okay, humans until 500 years ago, maybe even less than that, didn't have access to 3 square meals a day. Our existence as humans for millions of years was scrounging around, eking out a living by, finding the minimal amounts of food to eat. It wasn't like there was some surplus of food everywhere we went. So we're wired on the one hand to overeat when we are around food. And that's kind of been an issue for a lot of people. That's problematic, that to have that DNA hardwiring within us to want to overeat. On the other hand, we're wired to be able to store fat as a result of that overeating. Okay, that's obviously not working for us in this modern society. And finally, we have this ability to access those stored fats and live off those stored fats with no other food coming in for days at a time, if need be. And that's most of human history, right? That's what allowed humans to survive days, sometimes weeks, without any food and still stay strong, stay fast, keep your wits about you, be able to hunt down the next animal with a hope that you're going to kill that, or to forage enough to get the calories in. So we have this wiring. Now, the issue with the Atkins version of keto was that it was pretty dramatic and draconian, and there was an indoctrination or induction period that was, you went from probably 300 or 400 or 500 grams of carbs a day down to 20 grams of carbs a day. And that was such a slap in the face to a brain that's been used to glucose all the time.
Yeah.
So a lot of people who try going keto do it, they jump in, both feet. They undergo a couple of days of we call it the keto flu, but some pretty severe low blood glucose, dizziness, nausea. I wouldn't want to do it that way. And yet some people are very successful doing it that way. They just, they fight through the discomfort. But the whole purpose with the keto reset diet was to ease you into it. And so we spent 21 days basically just cutting the carbs back to all the good carbs. So we get rid of the grains and the sugars and the sweetened drinks and the sweetened beverages. By the way, everyone should get rid of most of those things, right?
Yes, absolutely. We
get down to 100, 110, maximum 150 grams of carbs a day. We get comfortable with that for a while. Starts that process of teaching the body to become better at burning fat, because you want to enter this program with all of your fat burning machinery ready to ramp itself up and burn more and more fats. When I talk about fat burning machinery, one of the things that happens as a result of this keto lifestyle is your body gets the signal that it's not going to be getting that much carbohydrate, that it's not going to be able to generate that much glucose from food. And therefore, it's going to have to depend much more on burning fat, which, as I say, we are ready, willing, and able to do. We are all wired to be able to do that. Yep. But it takes the absence of glucose, the absence of carbohydrate, to kick that system into gear, into full swing. So once we start restricting carbs, and when I say restricting carbs, I mean, I did a post on my Instagram the other day of a big ass salad that I had for lunch. And it was, a mixing bowl full of, lettuce and broccoli bits and tomato and cucumbers and crunchiness and pine nuts and avocado and a couple of pieces of chicken. And it was, and it was like the salad that everybody in the world should have at least a day. It's the healthiest thing I can imagine. And then I douse it with my Primal Kitchen salad dressing, which I made specifically for that reason.
Which, by the way, your ranch dressing is like literally, it's not even right how good that stuff is.
It's crazy how it's we have 5 flavors, but the ranch, for some reason, is just exceeding all of our projections.
It tastes like other things. I mean, it tastes like bad stuff is in it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, exactly. And yet, and yet the more you put on your salad, the healthier that meal becomes. Because it's the only oil in it is avocado oil, and then it's got all this other goodness in it.
Yeah.
But my point is that that salad was it was 20 grams of protein. It was probably 12 grams carbs, right? Which is like nothing. And it was probably 32 grams of fat. So for 400 calories, I got the most amazing micronutrient dense, perfectly keto meal that no one would go, oh, you shouldn't eat, that's not keto. Or no one who's even a carb eater would say, oh, I'm not going to eat that because that's just way too, too unhealthy. Oh, it's like the healthiest thing you can eat. So, so my point is, so that was, 12 grams of carbs, and then I had a handful of macadamia nuts later on in the day. And then for dinner, I had a piece of grass-fed steak and some grilled vegetables. So my intake of carbs for the day was 45 or 50.
And what did you have in the morning? You didn't eat?
No, I don't eat. So here's the other thing. I don't eat breakfast. I don't eat until 1 o'clock in the day. And this will prompt a whole different discussion about performance and calories and energy levels. But I wake up in the morning and I'm so full of energy. I don't need to eat. I'm certainly not hungry. I have a cup of coffee, and it's a nice, tasty cup of coffee. I actually recently I've been using my collagen fuel, vanilla collagen fuel, as a creamer because it puts 10 grams of collagen in.
That sounds amazing.
Into that coffee. So it's a functional beverage that way. But that's all I have until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I typically go to the gym around 10 o'clock and do a hard workout. So it is fasted in that regard. And then I don't eat until my lunch, which is, as I say, typically a salad like that. Yeah. And how I'm able to do that is because I'm keto, I'm living a keto lifestyle. What that means to me, the term keto, we have all these words that we use. Ketogenesis. Well, ketogenesis describes the fact that your liver is turning fat into ketones and supplying the bloodstream with ketones, which the body can use as fuel if it's built the metabolic machinery. Mm-hmm. And everybody makes ketones at some level throughout the day, even people who are carbohydrate dependent. But what's interesting is if a carbohydrate dependent person wakes up in the morning and doesn't eat, chooses not to eat, or goes on a fast, the body makes a lot of ketones, but because it hasn't built the metabolic machinery to use them, the ketones are spilled out in the breath, in the urine. You notice it on their breath, right? They do the urine sticks and it's bright purple and all this stuff. But you have to build the metabolic machinery to burn ketones. That's how keto works. So ketogenesis is the act of making ketones. Ketosis describes an excess of ketones in the bloodstream. Ketosis means your ketone levels are high. It's not a bad thing, but I'm suggesting that it's not necessarily great when they're that high and you're not using them. Then you're wasting all this amazing fuel. So
when you say not using them, you mean doing endurance types of things and if your brain doesn't yet know how to burn or to use ketones efficiently and hasn't let go of its requirement for glucose all day long, then you're still not going to be getting to that sweet spot of making just enough ketones to fuel the brain and burning fat so well that
all you need to supply your muscles up until 85% of your max is fat.
Yeah.
And that's that sweet spot of keto that so many people find themselves in right now, where they've built, and this is the goal. You know, the goal isn't to piss purple, right? The goal isn't to have 4 or 5 millimolar. The goal is to improve metabolic flexibility, the ability to burn fats when they're present, the ability to burn ketones when they're present, the ability to burn glucose when you overdid it and had a little bit of extra of something, or you just went off your keto program for a while. But this metabolic flexibility is what ultimately manifests itself in steady energy levels throughout the day, preservation of muscle tissue. So when people say, well, I didn't want to go keto because I didn't want to lose muscle, you know, there are whole websites dedicated to gaining muscle while in ketosis, because one of the epigenetic effects of this keto lifestyle is that things like beta hydroxybutyrate is an epigenetic signaling factor, which will cause your body to want to hold on to protein and not, again, recycle it out in the urine, but to hold on to protein, to hold on to muscle. Because again, go back to our ancestral model. If you ate 3 days ago and you haven't eaten since, you don't want to lose muscle mass, right? So you want your body to take these emergency steps to spare protein, to improve the amount of ketones so that the brain can stay completely on point. You also, now we're seeing a lot of anti-aging benefits of a keto lifestyle. Yeah. Because the theory is that, you know, when you're in ketosis, one of those epigenetic signaling factors is the induction of autophagy, which is where a cell will sort of do an audit of all of the things that are in it and say, you know what, there's some damaged proteins over here. Let's go eat those. Let's literally clean house and eat what we're cleaning. There's some damaged fats over here. There's some damaged DNA. Let's fix that damaged DNA. So there's this potential anti-aging, and you know, I don't want to go too far on a limb here, but potential anti-cancer effect of a keto lifestyle. So when I talk about, I use the term keto in a keto lifestyle, and that, like, I was 2 months deep in ketosis when I was writing the book, and then I went to Greece for a 2-week vacation, and I wasn't not going to eat baklava and and stuff, but it was all the work I did and it wasn't work. Let me tell you, it is so easy to live this keto lifestyle. If you just can't surround yourself with, you know, bagels and cookies and crackers and stuff, you just take that stuff out of your house, right? It's a real easy thing to adopt, as long as you don't, you know, allow the cravings and all of that, you know, the voice on your shoulder about all the candies and cookies and stuff. So go ahead.
I was going to ask you, so the 21 days, is there a reason you came up with 21 days? Is that number kind of a magic number when it comes to getting into ketosis? It
sort of is. You can get into ketosis in 3 days. Okay. Yeah. 21 days is, that's the time. Well, first of all, people say it takes 21 days to incorporate a new habit, right? So if you're going from a very high carb lifestyle to a relatively low carb lifestyle, that's a habit. You got to learn to not eat some of those foods. You have to learn to become good enough at burning fat that you can skip a meal and not even have it affect you 1 iota or affect you negatively 1 iota. So the 21 days is partly a result of that habit forming mantra, but it's also, it also takes about 21 days for the body to finally, you know, to get all the signaling and for the genetic signaling to go, all right, it's been a couple of days, couple of weeks now, you know, if my owner, you know, whatever, if the self is not going to be consuming readily available carbohydrate through which I can make glucose, I really need to take some steps. I really need to build some extra metabolic machinery, particularly in the muscles. So we see an increase in the number of mitochondria in the muscles as a result of this keto lifestyle. We see not just an increase in the number of mitochondria, but, you know, mitochondria have their own DNA. It's called mitochondrial DNA. It's a unique little thing within the cell. And so the mitochondrial DNA get the message that they need to be more efficient. So now we get doubly efficient, more mitochondria. The ones that are there are more effective at burning fat. And therefore we can put a lot more fat through our system and not rely and not have to dip into our glycogen stores or have to eat a meal with some carbohydrate because our blood glucose is low. That doesn't happen anymore. That kind of goes out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And probably, in my mind, one of the single greatest benefits of the keto lifestyle is a very pronounced mitigation of appetite. So appetite, hunger, and cravings, they diminish substantially. So your life is no longer run by, oh, I'm so hungry. If I don't get something to eat soon, I'm going to rip someone's head off. Or, oh, I can't have that meeting at 12:30 because it'll be out at 2 and I won't be able to have lunch. Or, oh, I'm going to have to buy something at the airport to take on a plane because it's a cross-country flight and they don't serve food. All those things are like, they disappear because, and that's why I have told people for decades, even before I was really into this whole keto movement, if you're not hungry, don't eat. Right?
Yeah,
that's
right.
If you're not hungry, why would you force yourself to something?
We've been conditioned, you know?
And by the way, Matt, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. You know that, right?
Of course, yes.
Yeah, I mean, but
robotic.
Robotic, and that's Kellogg's and CW Post and the Florida Sunshine Orange Commission telling people that you can't, you have to have your cornflakes and your orange juice for breakfast or else.
Absolutely, because grains on that pyramid, grains is a huge section on that pyramid, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Would you say that, from what your experience and what you found, are men better at keeping a a diet of ketosis than women are? Have you found that at all?
Yeah, I mean, that's the early feedback we get is that men typically adapt to it better. But I know so many women who are so into keto and do so well on it and swear by it. And, women, look, they have different hormonal issues. There are different phases in their life where this may or may not work. I'm not suggesting that this is the be-all and the end-all for everyone, but I think because I know that everyone has the programming hardwired into them to do it, if it were forced upon them, women historically in ancient times, you needed women to carry the embryo to produce new people. Evolution favors females because that's how evolution is able to receive the next set of the next variation or version of DNA into the next generation. So it doesn't make sense that men would respond so well to keto and women wouldn't, at least historically. But now, we have lots of issues in today's society that may have, women are, who are under a lot of stress, or families that, that are sort of dedicating their lives to for the time being and not taking care of their health.
Yeah.
Or they're different, times of the month where it's more appropriate to embark on something like this. I mean, there are a number of variables that we could talk about that might make it difficult for some women to get there with ease and grace, shall we say, right?
Yeah.
But I still think that everyone ought to try some version of keto. And that's why on the keto reset diet, we really don't recommend, we're not espousing the rest of your life or a lifetime of this. I'm suggesting that people do this for a couple of weeks each year, the same way that people might do a cleanse, or might do a New Year's resolution, or might, any amount of time I think that you spend in keto, you ratchet up your metabolic flexibility and you ratchet up your efficiency at extracting calories from food.
Yeah.
By the way, leads us to a whole new kind of conundrum. And that is when people say, well, what do you mean become more efficient at extracting calories from food? Don't I want to be inefficient? Don't I want to burn off as many calories as I can? And I noticed over the decades of my working with people, and I used to be this way, exactly the same way, which is, people tend to see what they can get away with. Like, what's the most amount of food I can eat and not gain weight?
Right.
How gluttonous can I be and not gain weight? And that's a bizarre way to live your life. And that's certainly
Absolutely.
not, that might have been, again, our wiring as early humans when we didn't have that much access to food. So if we came across a big grove of fruit, we'd eat as much as we could. And then the body would convert the fructose into fat, into triglycerides, and store it quickly. Typically, that was at the end of a growing season before the winter set in. So you had this nice layer of body fat that you could burn off during when food was sparse. Well, today we have food every meal, too much food at every meal. And so people have this thing like, what's the most amount of food I can eat and not gain weight? I go to the gym and I talk to people. Why are you doing 45 minutes a day on the treadmill? No offense, dude, but you've still got the same 25 pounds to lose that you've had ever since I've known you. Yeah. What's going on? Why do you do that? And sometimes, a lot of times, the answer is because I love to eat.
A lot. Most people.
You exercise because you love to eat.
Yeah.
I hear that among marathoners too. Why would you put yourself through that struggle, suffer, sweating, misery, so you can have a few more bites of something you probably shouldn't eat in the first place? That just doesn't make sense. So when you become metabolically efficient, you find out that you need fewer calories to get through the day. Now, understand me, I love every bite of food I put in my mouth. And I don't put in anything into my mouth that doesn't taste awesome. Right? So you can make your family version of a kale salad with a dry dressing. I'm not having it, man. I don't care how healthy kale is. I'm not a big fan, and it's got to be processed, and it's got to have a bunch of stuff on top. So it doesn't matter how healthy, it's got to taste great. And I enjoy every bite of food I eat. But by the same token, when I've finished eating, when I'm no longer hungry for the next bite, I'm perfectly fine pushing the plate away or wrapping it up and saving it for later, or sharing it with someone else, or whatever that looks like. And that's one of the skills that we develop in this keto lifestyle, is understanding that your ability to burn fat is largely contemplated to burn your own stored body fat.
Yeah.
That's why you have body fat. You have body fat so you can burn it, not so you can protect yourself from an enemy, not so you can have extra weight to do weight-bearing activities. You actually store body fat with the intention of burning it. To survive. And if you never get around to burning it, then you're, I would say you're missing out on one of the great experiences of being human.
I mean, really are. And I think the great part about what you're saying, Mark, is that, because here's the thing, we live in a culture where you go into Barnes and Noble and there's 1,000 diet books in front of you and they're all addressing different types of things. And I think people get overwhelmed because they say, if I do this, then there's going to be something else that comes out next month or next year. It's going to be a new thing, and I'm just going to stay out of that world. But the beauty about what we're talking about right now is that this is thousands and thousands of years of research upon genetics alone, that your body, this is how your body functions. This is not like a new diet or lifestyle way of life. Like your ancestors did this. When I go to Japan and I go to Okinawans have been doing this stuff for centuries upon centuries upon centuries. And they had some of their kids leave the island and go to America. And guess what started to happen? You know this research, Mark. It's like they started to gain weight because they stepped away from what their parents were doing. And so there's something about adopting knowledge that has been handed down and passed down for generation upon generation. And that's what I think the beauty of the keto reset diet is all about, is that you're just bringing this stuff to light. You're just helping people assimilate it better into their lives and know and say, hey, it's easy. It's not complicated at all. Am I right?
Exactly. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and that's the point. I think, Atkins was really onto something big, but the execution, was like a great idea with poor execution. The execution failed for a lot of people because it was so difficult to do that induction phase of dropping dramatically down to 20 grams a day. And people, after 3 or 4 days, were like, I'm over this. I can't take the wooziness, the nausea, the headache. So I wanted to create a kinder, gentler way to basically just eliminate that entire process and get you to the point where after 21 days, you're still eating lots of vegetables. Because I think in the original Atkins days, there weren't many vegetables. It was like cheese and meat. And, so people got bound up because they weren't getting fiber, and they were, there was the science behind burning fat and creating ketones was brilliant, but the execution wasn't there yet. And people were eating unhealthy fats too. So we're into, healthy sources of fats. We're into, lots of vegetables. So you get the fiber to feed the gut bugs, because we know now the gut biome is so important in all this stuff. And so at the end of 21 days, we've eased you into this sort of fat burning beast mode, and you're still not keto by the end of 21 days. now at the end of 21 days, now we have a test, a midterm exam, we call it in the book, where you answer a bunch of questions to indicate whether you're ready to go full keto. And it has to do with energy levels and strength and cognition, how you sleep. Because much of the book also revolves around the other lifestyle factors that a lot of other books don't even touch upon. They're basically diet books, but they don't touch upon how do you, not only how much quality sleep are you getting, but here's how you do it. Or, how much sunlight are you getting, or how often are you playing, or how often are you using your brain? How much time are you spending engaged in social interaction as opposed to digital interaction? These are all, they're all pieces of a puzzle, and you can do it without incorporating them all. But we want you to get to this point where you go, oh my God, my life is so awesome right now. I've got all this energy. I never get sick. I'm trending down toward my ideal body composition, or up toward my ideal body composition if you're somebody who has a tough time gaining weight. My day is no longer ruled by how hungry I am. And at that point, if you pass the midterm exam, then we go ketosis. And from there, it's just dropping another, 20 or 50 grams of carbs into this awesome place where now you really start to get some amazing energy benefits. You start to upregulate some of those fat-burning enzymes even more. You preserve muscle even more. I mean, it's an amazing space to be in.
Yeah.
And from there, you get to choose. Do I want to stay here, or do I want to, come back out and just go, okay, now I've done myself a favor that's going to last me for the rest of the year? Because when you build that metabolic machinery, Matt, it doesn't go away.
Right.
You can start eating carbs again. Now, if you spend 3 weeks eating 400 grams of carbs a day, right? And it only goes away because the body goes, okay, new signals. We don't need to burn fat anymore. Let's hold off. Let's hold on to our fat because we got plenty of carbohydrate coming in. Yeah. So it really is about manipulating this carbohydrate intake. And people would say, well, wait a minute, I don't want to be one or the other. Well, if you're a great sugar burner, a great carbohydrate-based athlete, for instance, you're really good at burning sugar, but you're not necessarily so good at burning fat, right? That's just, that's a little bit of a binary situation.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're a fat burner, you are already a good sugar burner, because you can always burn sugar with the same, but unless you built the fat burning machinery, you won't be good at burning fat. So that's why so many elite athletes now, especially the endurance athletes, are doing a low carb or keto training strategy to build more mitochondria, to become better at a higher output of energy derived from much more of calories coming from fat and not so dependent on glycogen. And then when they race, they'll still carb up the night before a race. It doesn't shift things around too much. They're still good at burning carbohydrate, but now they're able to, say in the old days when they might be going at 7 minutes a mile for 100 miles, burning 50% fat. Now they're burning 90% fat doing that. Yeah, it's spectacular. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've taken some notes, and I know everybody out there is taking notes as well. What would you say to marathon runners, Mark, who are doing the gel packs and they're trying to keep their carb intake up like we were just talking about? What are some alternatives that you recommend for people like that?
Well, I mean, you at some point you have to make a decision and say, do I want to be a sugar burner? Look, I raced my whole career as a sugar burner, right? So I'm not suggesting that it's not potentially efficient. I had my DNA tested a couple of years ago, and I was like 57% endurance athlete, 43% strength athlete. Well, 57% was not enough endurance athlete for me to be an elite world-class athlete. So the fact that I finished 5th in the U.S. National Championships, that I had several 220 marathons, one 218 marathon, proves to me proves to me that I did all the work possible to extract the greatest amount of potential from my body. But I beat the crap out of myself doing it, right?
Right.
So it's not to say that you can't keep racing this way, but if you want to be kinder on your body and not have the shutdown and the early retirement that I had, if you want to figure out a way to train less and get more out of it, I actually wrote a book a year and a half ago called Primal Endurance, which basically walks you through this entire process of how to train.
Yeah, I highly recommend that. It's a great book.
At the appropriate strategy. But I absolutely would recommend people look into low carb training as a means of improving their fat burning and ultimately a means of improving their efficiency and speed in racing endurance events.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Just words of wisdom. You're dropping bombs all over the place. I love it. So we're gonna like do a rapid fire round here. This is a fun round,
Okay.
and we'll start with this. If you had a billboard, one billboard that the whole world could see, what would you have it say?
Never drink soda.
Love it. What creates the most peace in your life?
My family.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah,
How many kids do you have, Mark?
I have 2 kids, and they're spectacular. And lucked out. Some people would say part of it was their upbringing, but I think a lot of it's luck too. But they're just fantastic. And my wife's awesome. I mean, my wife and I have been married 27 years. We've been together almost 30.
Wow.
And so we
got a lot of work to do. We got 13 under our belt.
Oh, okay. I hope that's years, not kids. But,
years, please. knock on wood there.
Yeah.
What do you like to do in your free time?
Wow. Well, okay. So this is going to maybe upset some people.
Maybe another episode, part 2?
No. It's fine. No, it's fine. I like to watch TV.
Love it.
So, I mean, because I work at I have a burgeoning restaurant business. I have a burgeoning food company, one of the fastest growing in the country almost last year.
Yeah.
I have a blog. I have books that I'm publishing all the time. So I literally work from 7 a to 7 p.m. And then I have dinner, and my wife and I watch, a couple of hours of TV. We don't go to the movies anymore. I think TV's, really good episodic, well-written TV right now.
Yeah, there is.
Is such a great escape.
Yeah.
And so I'd have to admit, that's one of my, if free time, to the extent that I have it, it's got to be a complete escape, right? Otherwise I'm thinking about stuff, and I'm still working if I'm doing something other than that.
Mark, do you work in sprints? Like so being an entrepreneur, doing all that you do you work in 90-day sprints? Like how do you work and then take a vacation? What's your method?
I work it's bad to say, but I work as long as I can until I can't take it anymore. We took a 2-week family trip to Greece this summer, and it was 15 days, and it was killing me because I was sort of like ready to come back to work after 9 days, and because I had stuff to do, and I can't. I should probably figure out ways to take more 3 and 4 day vacations more frequently and get away, but I don't have a set schedule of any kind of periodized work thing, because issues come up as they come up, and I can't respond to those timely if I've got some schedule that's dictating whether or not I respond.
For sure. And I think the cool part about your lifestyle, and I do the same thing, is like there's little times throughout our week where we can like go on a paddleboard or like hit the beach or something like that.
That's exactly right. So I'm
Yeah.
a mile away from my gym, so I can hop in the car, go do a quick 30-minute workout, come back. I don't have to get dressed for anybody or anything like that because I work out of my house. I have offices that are 30 miles up the road, and I have most of my employees work up there, and I go there once a week for meetings, but for the most part, I work out of my house. And so you're right. My boards are kept a mile away, so it's easy for me to go, oh, you know what? I got an hour and a half. I can go. And in that time, I can get there, gear up, get in the water, paddle for an hour, stow the boards back, and then be back home. You start to finish in 90 minutes.
Yeah. I love it. What book do you recommend to our heroes right now? It could be one you've read. It could be one you're reading now. The Keto Reset Diet, obviously we're emphasizing that one, but what other one has had a big impact in your life?
Well, I mean, I think one that I recommended my kids read is Tony Robbins' book, Money Master the Game. I don't know if you've read it.
I've never read that, but now I'm going to, because you're my third recommendation on that. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's just a well-written new look at wealth and money and our response to it, and how it shows up in our lives. So I mean, off the top of my head, that's one. I mean, I'm always reading technical stuff. That's when I go on vacation, like when I was in Greece, I tried to read 5 novels when I was in Greece.
Wow.
And
Did you do it? Did you do it?
I did. No, I did. It was great.
Nice.
It was great. And then that was that. That's the end of that. I can't do that until the next vacation. because I'm always having to read either, a manuscript that I'm working on or a book that someone else submitted for a forward or a comment from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Constantly. Yeah. If you could pick one action step for our listeners to take from this call, what would it be?
One action step would be, I won't harp on the diet so much, and I'll just say, sleep, get 7 to 8 hours of regular sleep every night.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What does Rob Wolf say? Like, if you want to kill someone quickly, take away their sleep. I love that. Yeah. Well, Mark, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. So much that we went through and we were able to dive through in an hour, and actually we went a little bit over. So thanks, Mark, for going a little bit over with us. If people want to learn more about you, what you're doing, your books, obviously the Keto Reset Diet is going to be coming out very, very soon. So make sure to go to your local bookstore and check that out. Where can our listeners go to learn more about you?
Well, so they could go to Mark's Daily Apple, which is my blog. It's been around coming up on 11 years now, 4,000 articles. Primalblueprint.com if you want to go to our e-commerce site and find some of our foods. We've got primalkitchenrestaurants.com if you're an aspiring restaurateur and wants to get involved in the clean eating movement. We've got an amazing fast casual breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
And you're going to be opening one of those in Florida, correct? North Florida, right?
Say again?
I said you're going to be opening one of those.
You find me a franchisee in North Florida, and we'll do it. So
you got yourself a deal.
Yeah, we've got multiple franchisees throughout the country right now. We've got we have one open in South Bend, Indiana, that's just doing gangbusters. My kids are opening one in Culver City in the Los Angeles area in 2 weeks. We've got one being built in Portland, Oregon, one in Santa Cruz, Sacramento. So yeah, we are just really excited about changing the way the world eats.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Mark Sisson. Mark, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show and just dropping knowledge bombs like crazy. I have a whole sheet of notes here. Anything that Mark said, just so everybody knows, is going to be in the show notes. So just go in the show notes, check it out. His new book, The Keto Reset Diet, is going to be coming out when, Mark, again? When is that?
October 3rd, but you can pre-order it by going to ketoresetdiet.com. ketoresetdiet.com, and you can pre-order from Amazon, Books A Million, Costco, Barnes & Noble, everyone. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Mark, thanks once again so much for coming on. To everybody out there, remember that there is a superhuman inside of you. You are superhuman. You were made to be superhuman. Right now, you have the genetic potential for that. What Mark was just talking about are key aspects that we need in order to develop, in order to be that superhuman dad, that superhuman CEO. And what I encourage you to do today is start here, start in the mind. Begin telling yourself positive things and letting yourself know that you have what it takes, but grasp the knowledge that's around you. And remember, you are and you will be that person who is transforming the world. So thank you once again for listening. Mark, thanks so much for spending time with me.
My pleasure. Thanks for being here.